Will I be involved in the Artifact Pro scene at all? I'm definitely going to make YouTube videos. Absolutely. Am I going to play Artifact as a pro? Very unlikely. I doubt that I'm going to get that good because there's going to be a lot of people that try to make it as a pro. So unless I have some like insane talent for Artifact, I don't really see it happening. And I'm not the best at memory things, so I feel like that would hold me back from being a pro player because I'm not very good at like remembering what cards they've played, taking into account all the damage sources. I forget stuff like that sometimes, so I'll probably still play casually, but still cover the game. Thanks for the sub, Lukey. Appreciate it. Okay, let's start with the 7.19b gameplay update. This was released today, a few hours ago, I think. In reference, we just had the International 8. It ended literally a week ago. So this is the first patch since then. The patch is not massive, but I'm not too surprised. I'm curious to see what their statements are, Valve statements, or at least IceFrog's on balance stuff, how it's changing, how they're going to adjust balancing for the next year. I think general pro player sentiment about the patches was that they were a little too often, but I think that was partially also because there was just too many tournaments going on. So teams were constantly playing qualifying, not practicing, more like constantly playing qualifiers. Maybe not having enough time to like think and develop around the game. So if I had to guess, I would guess that Valve/IceFrog are still going to keep this patch pattern up for at least a few more months to see how it plays out around the first major, maybe. But personally, I like the rapid updates. I think as a player of the game, I think it's better because it makes the game a little different every time. I think the in-game benefits they've added in, like little pop-ups to show what changed about your hero recently, I think those have all been really good. So basically, I'm very supportive of Valve and IceFrog in terms of Dota balance right now. So excited to read everything here. Wish you got to see Métier. Yep, me too. I wish I got to do Weatherman, but oh well. Okay, so gameplay update. General changes. Buyback respawn time penalty changed from plus 25% of remaining time to plus 25 seconds always. Okay, so in the past, I thought the way that buyback worked was that when you die, let's say I die and I have 100 seconds cooldown. When I buy back, my impression was that 100 seconds would be added to my next respawn. So what this reads is what it actually meant was it was 125% of what your remaining time was. That was added. But now the way it works is that if you buy back, you get a bonus 25 seconds for your buyback. So if you buy back late, let's say I die for 100 seconds, but I buy back at 10 seconds left, then my buyback duration, instead of being 10 times 125%, which would be 12.5 seconds, my added time would actually be 10 seconds plus 25 seconds. So basically, buying back is nerfed here, which is one of the things that OG abused really, really well at TI, was they always picked a lineup that was going to be better late game. This is what's so beautiful about OG as a team, actually, is that they always identify something abusive in the game, and then they play around it extremely well. Like, they find something really abusive and they play around it. So what they did was they always picked late game lineups, and they made sure that they didn't throw in team fights in really big ways. And if they did lose team fights, because they're losing, the enemy team is almost always closer to their side of the map. And then they would use buybacks really well because they had a defender's advantage, because then they TP to their towers and they're basically back in it. So they'd use buybacks really well with a better late game lineup to win team fights and eventually try to like break even, basically. They would be able to break even using buyback and catch up enough with buybacks that it would delay the game until eventually they just had better late game heroes. That's why they always picked for better late game. So this first nerf is literally there's a problem here with buying back, and that it's a little bit too good. So let's nerf it a little bit. And that people are going to be respawning. And if you buy back in early game, it's going to be way longer. So early game buybacks are extremely nerfed from this. It's safe to say. But certainly, I mean, it'll still matter like mid game. In late game, it's about the same. But early game buybacks are way more costly on your second death after your death. Okay, level 2 XP requirements changed from 200 to 230. In a scenario where Team A gets 2 melee denies per wave, and Team B gets 1 melee deny per wave. Team A wave requirement for level 2 increases from 2 waves to 3 waves. Team B wave requirement remains at 3 waves. Total XP needed for other levels unchanged. Okay, so that means that like getting to level 3 is a little bit harder. Is that correct? Oh no, to get level 2. So basically if one team denies slightly better than the enemy team, getting 2 melee denies instead of 1 melee deny, they would hit 2 a whole wave early. So basically at the 1 minute mark, even though they're both laning basically the same, except for one small difference in my opinion of 1 melee creep deny, the 2 heroes with the 2 denies instead of 1 deny would hit level 2 at 1 minute. And that's like a big window. That's like 30 seconds basically until the other wave is able to get level 2. And having level 2 is really powerful because then you have 2 skills. So that could be 2 nukes, 2 disables, or whatever. 2 skills is way more powerful than 1 at the start of the game. And if you can abuse that, you can get a really good trade in at that moment and then possibly set a really big tempo for the laning stage. So it's basically meaning that like if you're kind of just close in this dual lane scenario, that you're not going to have this gigantic window by just having 1 more melee creep denied, which really isn't that much. I guess it's 1 per wave, so it's like every 4 waves. The first 4 waves you get 1 extra melee deny per wave, but still it's on paper it sounds very small, and it shouldn't be that it creates this. I guess it's the 1 minute mark. Well, technically, it's more like the 1 minute mark to 1 minute 30 mark. That part in there is basically where you'd be able to abuse this. So, just a small, maybe something that a pro complained about. I could definitely see this as something that a pro player explained, like this is abusive. Basically, that like we identified that if you get slightly more denies, then it gives you this huge advantage, and then that's exactly when we go for kills. Like you should just change it so that you don't have this. Oh, we missed 1 melee deny. Now we're screwed for 30 seconds. Or something, or longer maybe, who knows, so this is kind of interesting. This is very specific, and the fact that they explained it I think is really helpful, because otherwise if they just wrote this first sentence it'd be like, why would they do that? But explaining it makes a lot of sense. Basically just helps even out the laning stage in the mid game based on the current deny experience that you get from denies. So interesting. Glyph is now on cooldown until the 3 minute timer in game. This is because mid players were using it, and sometimes in safe lane as well, to glyph creeps at the start of the game. They would use it like, oh shit, he's about to get an easy deny in my range creep, or something like that when I'm out of position, so I'm going to glyph. That way it buys me 5 seconds. Now he can't go for that because his opportunity's gone, or something like that. You could use it for that in the mid lane, which would actually help a lot because it could set some kind of a tempo experience advantage. I've also seen where like an underlord would go to the off lane and he would firestorm the enemy creep wave, and the carry would let the firestorm hit like twice, and then they would glyph. That way it didn't super push the wave, and then the underlord doesn't get a fast wave of experience. Basically there's things like that you could use that was abusive, but now that's on cooldown until 3 minutes in the game. You also won't accidentally press it anymore, which is rare but not a big deal, but kind of interesting. Okay, Stout Shield item changes. Damage block from melee heroes increased. Stout is buffed back to what it used to be. I would argue that this is just basically a buff to melee heroes. Like ranged heroes are potentially very strong right now just because you can always harass and you can always contest denies. And now that players are better at contesting denies, maybe melee heroes feel too vulnerable, especially some like melee supports. And while writing like Learn Dota guides, I thought a lot about like melee heroes versus range heroes, and there are some item advantages like Quelling Blade, Stout Shield kind of stuff that make melee heroes better than range heroes, but melee heroes always will have a disadvantage outside of those kinds of items or general like stat advantages they have by having a lot of melee heroes are strength obviously, so they're obviously missing some things like armor usually. But Stout Shield being buffed is, I think, completely fine. Interestingly, it's not buffed for ranged heroes. So for ranged heroes, they're still only going to block 9 damage. Not that ranged heroes almost ever buy Stout Shield, but I think it could be justified against like Broodmother, maybe. Something like that I could see. Anyways, good for melee heroes. Definitely good for supports. It's actually really good against creeps now. So the way creeps do about 18 damage, I think. But basically this means that if you Stout Shield block a creep, that they deal 0 damage to you now. I'm pretty sure. Because melee creeps deal 75% of their damage to a hero because it's a basic attack towards a hero, 75, and piercing, aka range creeps, do 50. So if you Stout Shield block a range creep, it does 0 damage. But I think melee creeps can do like 1 damage, depending on their damage range. 1 to 2 damage, maybe. But with this buff, when Stout Shield procs, you should take 0 damage from melee creeps now, unless they're buffed by damage. So that's kind of interesting. And also, it helps a tiny, tiny bit against enemy heroes. But primarily, this is a very small buff to Stouts versus creeps, I guess. Ring of Aquila getting nerfed. This item has essentially been unnerfed kind of for a while. Ring of Aquila started getting really popular again. There was a period certainly where Ring of Aquila was purchased on non-agility heroes, and that was maybe like 6 months to a year ago. But in the last 6 months, I believe, they changed how stats work a little bit, in that your primary attribute gives you more benefits. So 7 agility points or 9 agility points that Aquila gives you were not the same on every hero now. They're better for agility heroes, meaning that Aquila gives you more armor on an agility hero, closer to 4 armor, whereas on non-agility heroes it's more like 3.5. So Aquila, they basically already made Aquila worse for anti-heroes. It dealt 13 damage. It was basically a 13 damage item for 985 gold. Gave you 3.5 armor, gave you 3 strength, 3 int as well, and it gave you a 2 armor. Well, ignore the armor because I already said 3.5 armor, but also gave you 0.5 mana regen aura. So Ring of Aquila basically is like, remember how I talked about like melee heroes being worse than anti-heroes? Well, the Ring of Aquila exists because agility heroes are almost always worse early on in the game than either strength or anti-heroes. Anti-heroes have a lot of mana to cast spells. Strength heroes just have a lot of raw HP and usually have pretty high base damage, whereas agility heroes don't always have good base damage. They don't always have good armor, and they don't have a lot of mana pool or abilities that are good in the early game. So you needed some item that helps them like ramp up a little faster. That's why Ring of Aquila only exists for agility heroes and not for strength and intelligence ones. So this nerf really needed to happen. And I was trying to think about ways that you'd nerf Ring of Aquila, because it is still needed, but reducing the bonus damage is easily the best way to do it. You don't want to reduce the amount of agility it gives you, because that still is like the primary reason that's good for agility heroes. The raw bonus damage it gives you is just like too much, basically. It doesn't mean that anti-heroes shouldn't still buy a Ring of Basilius. They certainly can. But now with the Ring of Basilius, which gives you 7 damage, doesn't get upgraded to 10 when it combines to Ring of Aquila. So now, making a Ring of Aquila, the only bonus you get from the raw components is that your Wraith Band goes from 7 agility to 9. Now your bonus damage from Aquila doesn't go from 7 to 10 as well. So those two benefits were just a little too good, and I think this is the best way to nerf the item, that it's still bad for agility heroes, because they will almost every agility hero that is at least a core will buy Ring of Aquila, because it's so good as an item. It was 19 damage for 985 gold. It's like super good. Plus everything was so good about it. But the fact that it's only 7 now is certainly weaker. So if you're not an agility hero, Aquila now gives you 10 damage for 985 gold. If you really want armor, it's not terrible to get, but you're spending a lot more gold per damage now. For agility heroes, they'll still buy it because it's going to give you 16 damage. So it's a 16 damage item for agility heroes, still very good, and only 10 for non-agility heroes. So certainly worse than it used to be. So very interesting. But I was definitely expecting an Aquila nerf. It was bought on virtually every like anti-hero, a lot of cores. Almost every core that wanted armor was going to buy a Ring of Aquila, bar none. So, all right. And also just like the laning advantage you get if you get a fast Aquila is maybe a little bit too much on some of these anti-heroes. So now it's only 10 damage. Is it worth for them to buy a Wraith Band now? I would argue probably not. I think we'll see more Ring of Basiliuses on some of these heroes now. And just it stay as a Ring of Basilius, which is fine. Mechanism, the heals increase. Mech is an item that really hasn't been bought much in quite a while, actually. Greaves has not really been used in a while. It's just not worth buying usually. The mana cost is kind of high. The buildup is fine, but it doesn't really give you the best solution. Like, heals don't really solve all your problems, because if somebody has like an Orchid or I don't know, a Basher or something, it's like, it just feels like you kind of die anyways. If they even, especially like late game, if they have like a Bloodthorn or a Scythe of Ice, like mech isn't going to save your life, you know? That's what it feels like. So I think this item definitely needed a buff. Vlad's was the most recent buff item that was buffed in kind of a similar way in that Vlad's gives your team armor. It gives them a little bit of HP regen, damage, mana regen, all that stuff. It helps you push, basically. Mech is pretty much the same cost. And it's technically better against like AoE sources, but there's a lot of like single target burst damage stuff. Not to mention that Spirit Vessel is really popular right now, so something that gives somebody a raw heal is just not very reliable, because a lot of supports will rush Spirit Vessel as one of their first major items. Dark Willows will rush it sometimes, Earth Spirits, things like that. Spirit Vessel can be very good for it's mostly best for the anti-healing. And also, like, upgrading from a 2,350 gold item to Guardian Greaves is so much money. It's like, what, 3,100 gold to get this upgrade? And yes, the cooldown goes down, but and you get this, like, AoE armor aura that is good if you're low, but it's just... getting, like, as a 4 or a 5 sometimes, going from Mech to Guardian Greaves is just not worth it. You'd rather buy, like, a 4 staff and something else for 1,000 gold. It's difficult to justify the upgrade cost rather than buying like a Lotus Orb or just skipping Mech and going, I don't know, Glimmer or Lotus or something. Just feels better. As does like earned Spirit Vessel. Spirit Vessel is what, 29.75? That's like what, 600 gold more than Mech, and it just does so much more, honestly. For your personal survivability, it's already better. It's 250 health. This gives you like what, 18 times 5, assuming you're a non-strength hero. So it's like 100 HP plus a 275 heal. So it's like 375 HP. So it's definitely more HP if you heal, but you also have to pop use the mana. That's 225. It's a lot. Spirit Vessel can be used defensively to heal you. It can be used offensively. It has an amazing build-up. Urn of Shadows is such a better build-up than Mechanism. Like, outside of like the Buckler Rush, which usually isn't that good to get right at the start of the game compared to Urn, like a fast Urn just transitions so well. It's like instantly 875 gold. You get a raindrop in the laning stage that helps you. Then all of a sudden you got an Urn. It's like this item is just like outshines Mech in such a huge way because it's both defensive and offensive. So. Side of the Vice getting a pretty big nerf, actually. The mana cost increasing from 100 to 250. That is a huge mana cost for an item. But this item actually got so good. It's actually really good right now. The reason being, and this is a little bit of a delay, because I don't think they've buffed other aspects of the item that much. But when they buffed Hex to be non-dispellable, that's basically where Scythe got kind of selectively broken. Things like... Scythe is essentially a solution to things like Aeon Disc, because Aeon Disc, if you go below 70%, it procs, it gives you a strong dispel, and then you can use your ability or whatever to escape. But if you're Scythe, when that goes off, you're still Hexed, which means it gives your opponents an opportunity to follow up with another disable, which then won't be strong dispelled, so then they can continue chain stunning you. So Hex is really good for that reason. 250 mana is a lot, but to be honest, if you own a Scythe of Ice, you probably don't have that many mana problems, because if you're an int hero, you're getting 2.25 mana regen. It gives you 35, and it gives you a lot of mana. But basically what this means is that for a non-int hero, Scythe is certainly worse now, is the big thing. If we do the math really quick, I believe you get 12 mana per int right now. So if we do 35 times 12, we're looking at, so this gives you 420 mana. Interesting. If you're not an intelligence hero. If you are an intelligence hero, we're talking about 35 times 15, which is 525. So it gives you an extra 75 mana if you're an int hero. And also, you get 25% more mana regeneration if you're an int hero from the int you have. So if you're an intelligence hero, this mana cost increase is probably not a big deal. If you are a agility or a strength hero, this is definitely more of a big deal. And there have been some heroes that have been buying this item, like Clinxes and stuff, just because it's just such an easy way to build into an item. You don't have to worry about stunning people. You don't have to worry about buying a Bloodthorn and bursting somebody and then them having like a BKB or anything and requiring a nullifier. It's just easier sometimes to buy a Scythe to take your already high damage from your skills and turn that into a guaranteed disable. So I think this nerf is completely reasonable, and from a Dota player's perspective, it doesn't bother me that much because it seems fine. And now it has some counters too. 250 mana is a lot. That's not, if you're getting mana drained or something, that takes a lot to get to. And using this multiple times in a fight as well would also really kill your mana pool. So I think this is fine. It's a mana cost that is justified for the strength of the item. Now that there's so many good defensive items, Scythe got maybe a little overbuffed potentially, and maybe Icefrog just doesn't like how often it's being used on some of these hard carries. Phase boots speed bonus on range heroes reduced down to 13%. So that's a pretty big nerf, actually. Because previously, it used to be same movement speed for everybody. But basically, Ice Frog is saying range heroes are too good. Range heroes nerfed and range heroes nerfed in these two, I would argue. And maybe even Aquila, you could argue, range heroes nerfed, because range heroes would just abuse the very high damage, cost efficiency, lane domination of it to right-click the crap out of any melee hero and to just recommend lanes pretty much. But 13% is a pretty big nerf, I must say. 20% for melees and 13% for ranged heroes. I wonder how many heroes are going to be really hurt from this. Who's been buying phase boots? Heroes like Necrophos certainly buy it sometimes. I don't know if there's that many heroes that really buy phase that are ranged. I guess some cores like Death Prophets, Lenas, things like that is maybe the ones that stick out to me. Enchantress, Huskar was buying phase boots from what I've seen. Potentially Nature's Prophets in some games. Wind Ranger, certainly a Wind Ranger nerf, 3% less for phase. Although you don't, if you play support, you don't have to buy it in my opinion, but a core should usually buy phase boots. Not too many phase boots out there for ranged heroes, but there are some, certainly. Don't really ever see it on like Draw Range or anything like that for obvious reasons, because you want the treads. Maranas, I feel like have been buying treads, but maybe sometimes they do buy phase. Weavers almost always go treads for the tread swapping. So there's some cases, but really not that many. Huskar is really like the only other major one that I've seen some very effective phase boots. Okay, let's go down to heroes. Oh, instant turn rate is now a melee only feature. I forgot that they added the turn rate thing. And this actually makes a lot of sense that they removed this. So I didn't think about this. So remember I was talking about melee versus range benefits. One of the best benefits to being a melee hero is that, so when you're a ranged hero, your benefit is that you're ranged, right? So you're kiting, you're walking away from somebody, attacking them, then turning to run away and attack them again, then turning away to run. If you're faster than them, basically you can always attack them and they can't attack you back. But if you're a melee hero, the benefit is that I'm running at you and I don't have to worry about turning around, because most melee heroes have their numbers adjusted so that their armor is higher than ranged heroes, or their HP is higher, or their damage is higher. It's usually mixes of things like that. So usually a melee hero is going to easily, if he's in melee range against a ranged heroes, melee heroes will almost always kill melee heroes or ranged heroes first. You'll do more damage. So the fact that phase boots gave ranged heroes a turn rate bonus reduced some of that deficit of being a ranged hero, because every time that if I attack a melee hero, then I turn around to run away. I turn once, it takes a little bit of time, and then when I turn back to attack again, I have to turn second time. So every time I want to kite a melee hero, I have to turn 2 times. Whereas a melee hero is just like running along, trying to attack, So the fact that phase boots increased the turn rate, I totally forgot about that change. But the fact that it did increase their turn rate means that with phase boots, a ranged hero could, I don't know how much better, but better kite a melee hero. So the fact that this is removed for melee heroes kind of reflects that. But basically, yeah, phase for ranged is very strong for obvious reasons, because it makes you faster. And if you're faster than your opponent as a ranged hero, then you should be able to kind of permakite them, which is annoying to play against if you're melee. So maybe too many issues with melee heroes being too slow here. It's maybe a reason for the phase boost change. Alchemist, Grievel's Greed Bounty Rune multiplayer rescaled. I think this is actually pretty fair. I still kind of am sad that Alch support got so nerfed by the bounty rune change, but I did really like the bounty rune change. It was kind of one of those like unfortunate things that just kind of had to happen. And then it kind of Grievel's got buffed a few times, and all of a sudden like Alch wasn't played much at all. I saw him in a qualifier game once in EU, one game, and then I never saw him get played again for EU and CIS qualifiers. I think maybe there was one other game. But then all of a sudden for TI, it was just like, oh guys, so we can actually play late game cores now. We kind of understand how to lane okay. And all of a sudden Alch was really good. So at least this would require your Alch to be more leveled up to get stupid good gold advantage, because this would change you from, it's like 40 gold level 1, right? So you're getting like 40, 80, 120, 140 gold per bounty rune at level 1. Now you're only going to be getting 80. What did I just say? 140 to 80? So that's kind of a shitload. Big change. It's almost like 50% less, right? I guess we can tell that by 2 and 3.5. Quite a bit less gold at level 1. So you won't be able to get like an instant salves or something, like 3 salves or whatever the hell you want to buy in the laning stage, or ring of protection or whatever the heck ever. Basically, you could, with those first 2, if you got 2 bounties, you'd instantly get 280 gold. If you got 3 bounties, you'd have 420 gold, which is pretty much very close to like your first last hitting item, whether that's a Basilius or a Wraithband or whatever. Or if definite, you could basically instantly finish an Aquila, just about, with this, within like 2 last hits or something. So I think this is a nice change to the hero. It's still going to make him viable later, but just tiny little nerfs still to the laning stage where Alk is starting to ramp up. And it's probably, as a result of this, it should be easier to outlane the hero if you're just a better hero, or if you last hit better than him. So I think this is good. Bloodseeker, Blood Rage heal rate reduced from 19 to 25 to 16 to 25, so it's a little bit worse at level 1, which I think is fine. Bloodseeker generally felt like a very pressurable hero in the laning stage when I saw him, but he ended up scaling fine later. So this is just going to make you a little bit worse at the laning stage. 3% is not that much. I mean, melee creeps have like 500 HP or something, 550, I think. So before you'd get like 104.5 HP per melee creep, assuming they have 550. I'm not going to bother to look it up because it's probably not important enough, because I think I'm close enough. And now it's only 88, so you're getting like, that's pretty significant actually. Let me double check. I just said 88 for one of them. To 104.5, so that's like 16.5 HP per melee last hit that you're losing now at level 1. And a lot of players do leave Blood Rage at level 1. They go like a 1-1-3 build, which makes sense because you have perma uptime on Blood Rage. You don't really need a second point, but you'd need a second point to get to the first point of the previous level. So that's significant. 20 HP. What did I say? 16? Yeah, it was like 16.5 HP. That's pretty significant. That really adds up. It means you have a slightly better ability to harass through Bloodseeker instead of him being like if I'm getting all the last hits, it's impossible to kill me, even if you're constantly attacking me and using some spells. So I think this is a nice tiny bit of a nerf to Bloodseeker that will still potentially keep him relevant. Broodmother base agility is reduced by 3. You can take a look at what it's like right now. Mother is angry. So 3 less base damage is pretty significant. That means 3 less agility. That means 3 less damage. It means 3/5 armor. So that's like, well, actually it's really easy, isn't it? Each point of agility gives you 1% more estimated hit points on agility heroes. I didn't make that connection until now. Because each point of armor gives you 5% estimated hit points if you only take physical. But because agility heroes only need 5 armor, is that wrong? Or is it 6? Yeah, it is 5. You need 5 agility points on an agility hero to gain 1 armor. So now 1 point of agility essentially increases your estimated hit points by 1%. That's cool math actually. So basically this means Brood hits for 3 less damage at the laning stage. He attacks like 4% less fast. Or he's 4 less attack speed or whatever, 4.25 I think the math might be. And importantly, he has 3% less physical survivability at level 1. So this is, and at all stages of the game really, because he's going to have 3 less agility than he did before. So this is honestly kind of big. It's like literally a slippers of agility. I would argue this is a moderate buff. Or a moderate nerf to the hero. Even though there's so few like characters here. But this is pretty significant. It's going to be missed last hits, which could be denies, which could be you not getting your spider thing out in time, which could be you missing kills, you dying faster to physical damage. There's a lot of things that really add up here. Chen Penitence duration reduced from 8 seconds at all levels to 5, 6, 7, 8. That sounds pretty fair. The hero, they nerfed the shit out of creeps, kind of. They really limited, I knew that was going to happen. They really limited the third skill. What is it? 32 second. I guess it's not terrible. 32 second cooldown is certainly manageable, but Chen was still, and Enchantress certainly as well, were still like top picks against certain teams at the end of TI. So that definitely needed to be some change. And they would usually go like Penitence level 1 and just kind of right click heroes. And then when the creeps would spawn, they grab creeps at level 2 and start doing stuff. So this is, I think, a completely fine nerf. 8 seconds is a very long time to be slowed by 18%. And over long chases, that could really add up. Clinks was certainly one of the big heroes of TI. Wasn't like the biggest, but it definitely was an absolute staple. I think it was like top 6 most picked. Base strength reduced by 2. That's 36 HP. I don't really care about the magic resistance and stuff like that, but that's a massive. He's literally made out of bones, guys. This makes a lot of sense. Not that, I mean, whatever, you can be strong through magic or whatever, but there's not a lot of things to break on his body, right? There's only so much HP he can have. He's got these armor pieces to make it look like he's sturdy. I don't even know how he can carry this. He should have 452 HP in my opinion, it's not going to add up the most over the course of the game. I mean, how much regen? It's like a 1% health regen amplification difference and like, what, 0.16% magic resistance. He's certainly squishy and burstable. And what the crazy part is that pros didn't even get Skeleton Walk usually until like level 7 or something, or level 8 very often, just because the other skills are very good early in the laning stage. It's a very good laning hero, basically. But this probably needed to happen. Clinks was pretty damn good at TI. Crystal Nova is nerfed in the late game now. Interesting. CM was not the most. This is probably the 3rd Crystal Nova buff or nerf now, right? Well, 2nd in a row, right? They buffed Crystal Nova too much, and then they nerfed it to 130 man at level 1. Now it's the same. They've determined basically that CM is okay. Her balance level is okay in the laning stage now. Now her abundancy of casting Crystal Novas in the mid and late game is too good. She wasn't the most picked hero, but she was definitely played on and off. I think she was like top 10 most drafted by the end of the tournament. But she wasn't very close to first. She was a little bit farther away than I expected. But there's just better laning heroes. So just a little nerf to the hero. Late game, maxing Nova first. Still probably worth doing. But you can't really spam it quite as much as you could. Dark Willow getting nerfed. She was certainly one of the big supports at the tournament. Did we see much play in the finals? I think we did still see her a little bit. Very good hero though. Shadow Realm damage level 1 is now more around the lines of like a regular nuke 90. Still the same level 4. And Curse Crown cast point is gone up to 0.2, meaning that this is the amount of time that it takes for you to cast Curse Crown. So it's going to be harder for you to cycle through all of your spells rapidly, or at least to do like a fast Cursed Crown cast into a Yule Scepter, for example. The delay is 4, so I don't think there was anything like... I don't think there was any like super OP combo that was necessarily abusable. To be honest, what I was expecting the nerf to Dark Willow to be would be the cast range of Terrorize, her ultimate, because it felt like the range was just so high that as soon as there was one disable on an enemy, that like an important carry in the late game, if you do like a quick blink initiation, she would terrorize that hero, and then they're guaranteed dead unless they had like somebody to strong dispel them. So I thought that's how they would nerf her, but I think nerfing Curse Crown is kind of similar in the sense that it means that she can't easily just be like, oh shit, the fight's starting. Bramble Maze, Curse Crown, Terrorize. It's going to take slightly longer to do that combo, which means that she might be chain initiated in time, and it would prevent that from working out the way she necessarily wants it. So that is my impression of her. I didn't realize it was 4 seconds at all levels. Interesting. Except for the talent one. I believe there's the talent one that makes it better. Okay, Drow Ranger. Also a really big hero for TI. VGJ Storm was the most winningest team on it from what I remember. The series they got eliminated, they got banned against in both games. Not saying it was all they could run or anything, but they were very effective with Drow Ranger. Her base agility is reduced heavily by 7. That's huge. So her base damage is unchanged. That means that they buffed her base damage by 7 to make up, so that she still does the same damage at level 1. But knowing what we know about agility, 7 less agility is basically, it's almost 10 attack speed. It is 7% estimated hit points, so she's way weaker at level 1. It's what, 7/10 of 2 armor or whatever that is. It's 1.4 armor, so she has 1.4 less armor at level 1. She has 10 less attack speed, and a little bit, tiny bit of movement speed difference, which is probably not that insignificant either. It's like, I think it's like 0.062 or 0.063 or something times 7. So this is 0.4% movement speed less at level 1. So she's even slower. And 1% movement speed is like 3 movement speed for a typical level 1 hero. So this is like 1.5 movement speed less level 1. So she basically is like bad at laning. Now, however, she is getting an agility buff of up to 2.2. So to figure out how long it takes for that to be reached, we just have to divide 7 by 0.3. 7 divided by 0.3. And it is at level 23. So basically, not at the level 1, it's way worse. Your hero is like significantly worse, which is already kind of Drow's weakness is the laning stage. But it isn't until like level 23 or level 24 that your agility is equal to what it was prior to this patch. So I would say this is a pretty moderate nerf. If you're hitting Drow Ranger, she's going to have a bad time, basically. That's a pretty significant nerf. With that said, base attack animation time improved. The reason they did this, most likely, is because if you reduce her agility, her base agility by 7, it's so much attack speed that you would definitely notice the delay in attack. So they improve the time that the animation exits your hero. That way, because this number gets reduced by how much attack speed you have. So this previous number of 0.7 with this 26 agility, probably let's say it meant, I don't know, it was 0.7 or something, I don't know, or it was probably more like 0.5 or 0.6. But then when they reduced her agility, it probably went from like 0.6 back up to like 0.65. So her base attack animation time got worse as a result of the agility, which is why they're buffing the time, because it's offsetting. So it should still functionally be the same last hitting with her, but her attack speed is less between attacks, so she can't get 2 last hits close together as fast level 1, and she's just way weaker. So this is pretty significant. It's hard to overstate how much, like 7% less physical survivability and like 10 less attack speed is at the level 1. It's kind of significant, I feel. Maybe I'm going crazy. Maybe I'm talking about it too much. Enchantress has had her knees bashed a little bit. Base movement speed reduced by 15. It used to be like, what, 340 or something insane? Yeah, she was 340 movement speed level 1. That shit was crazy. You actually didn't even need boots until later. But 340 was crazy. So now she's 325. I think she was the fastest hero in the game, if I'm not mistaken. Now it's probably like Luna or something like that. I think Coddle's getting up there too. Enchantress was probably the fastest. Gyrocopter base agility reduced by 5. Okay, Gyro also getting nerf. Gyro IO was very much a big thing. I'm slightly surprised about this because it felt more like the typical, like, hey, IO pairs really well with Gyro because of the Ags upgrade. So, but Gyro by himself was not picked that much. So I don't know. This feels a little weird. Very similar. Okay, interesting. So here they specify base damage and armor unchanged, whereas up here the base damage is unchanged. So this means Drow's armor was reduced, but Gyro's, despite his base agility going down from 5, his armor is not reduced. So the difference is he is equally survivable. He just attacks 6.25 slower, something like that. Am I crazy? Yeah, 6.25. 6.2. He has 6.25 less attack speed and tiny bit less movement speed. Is that it? Right? Because the armor is unchanged, base damage is unchanged. That's it. Tiny. It's basically a very, very small buff to the hero, or a very small nerf to the hero. Very, very small. Not that big of a nerf. So this is appropriate. The fact that the armor is unchanged, I think, is good. If the armor was changed, I would think that's a little too extreme. All right, Huskar. Base damage is reduced by a weird amount. His lower threshold goes down by 2, and his upper threshold goes down by 6. So basically 2 to 6 less damage, right? Does that make sense math-wise? So it's like, what, 4 damage less? Kind of curious that they also made the range less wide. Before, his range was, what, 9 points? And now it's only 5 or 6. So they basically made it, they lowered his damage, but they made it a little bit easier to last hit. Because now he does like, what, 42.5 damage. Before he did like 46 or something. So it's like a 3.5 damage nerf about. I don't always do this right because you have to count the 40 and the 41 and the 42 and the 43. And I always think about the numbers in between. It's for some reason confusing my brain. But closer grouping of damage, but definitely a nerf. And then so making his last hitting in lane a lot harder. Which means that you pretty much have to buy some starting items. Most Huskar players I saw were going bracers, actually. Nobody really touched Soul Ring anymore. They kind of gave up. It seemed more of like a Western scene thing. The Chinese teams would usually get like a double bracer on Huskar just to make the laning stage better. It's just not that expensive anyways, right? You're buying like double null talismans, and a double bracer on a Huskar increases your damage by 7 each, and it gives you a lot of HP, and having more HP regen percentage is great for inner vitality, and even the int and the agility are not bad on the hero either. So were people buying Aquila on Huskar? I feel like they were too. They were going like double bracer Aquila with either phase or treads, and then they get an armlet, I think. The level 10 talent is increased on health. I think this needed to happen. People started realizing the health talent was just awful. That's because if you ulti, you lose like half your health. So basically half of this health talent goes away anyways after you ulti. If you're low HP, increasing like your max health being increased is not really that beneficial. Because basically once you have armlet and you start armlet toggling, if you armlet toggle, your HP is essentially the limit of your armlet anyway. So 225 health is starting to become more around what is fair, arguably, because 175 health is basically 10 strength for a non-strength hero, whereas 225 is basically 10 strength for a strength hero. Obviously 10 strength would be godlike. If there's 10 strength on the right, people would grab that every effing time. But 225 health is more fair, basically. And I could see myself, if they have a lot of burst damage, and maybe if I expect to get ganked or something, maybe it could be worthwhile. But almost everybody goes damage, I think. IO Spirits is cooldown is being nerfed. That's the level 1 Spirits. Still the same later, so you're gonna be less able. What's the duration? 19. So you could basically have perma uptime prior, and basically do like 5 volleys of spirits, resummon spirits again, and get another 5. Whereas now that's a lot harder. You can get close with level 2 spirits, but basically just like level 2 IO is worse now. The experience talent being nerfed, I think, was probably justified. The Tether grants Scepter bonus is just so good with some heroes. So if you have a combo around that, it's just kind of broken. Maybe a little bit too much. 5% is not that much, but it is kind of hard for IO to hit big levels otherwise. So I think this is probably fair. As both of his level 10 talents have been nerfed now. It used to be 60 damage on the left, now it's 45, and now we're down to 20 experience on the right. So Mirana's level 15 talent. This is definitely the problem area of the hero, where she wasn't like the most picked hero, but she was definitely very popular. 100 leap attack speed is like actually insane how good that is. Base, it's 120 at level 4. That was a loud motorcycle. So you're getting 220 frickin' attack speed just from leaping once. So you basically get any damage item. And if they didn't have a way to defend themselves, she would just murder you. You would just instantly die, basically. But yeah, 20 less attack speed, sure, probably fine. Probably needed to happen. I don't think I've ever seen somebody get the Sacred Arrow cooldown. There's like no reason to bother because the leap attack speed is so good. Nature's Prophet, base damage reduced by 3. This hero was kind of played as a support towards the end. Basically, I don't think I ever actually saw Nature's Prophet core. I know OG did pick Prophet support in the final game, maybe. I think they had Prophet support. But his base damage was really high. It's a huge range, 52 to 66. Prior to this, it was 55 to 69, which is insane. That's like 62 base damage or something like that. It's like without items you do 62 damage on average, and then you spawn treants and you right click people, and it's like, how can you ever stand up to that? So base damage reduction of 3 is not a big deal. I think for a core it's fine. For a support it just felt so broken, because it's like you spend all your items on support items and regen and stuff, yet you still hit like harder than the cores do, because the cores all got nerfed down to like low 50s, so that when they actually buy like a null talisman or whatever, then their last hitting becomes like reasonable. They used to be too good. So Nature's Prophet was like one of the few heroes that has really high base damage that was left over. So I think this is kind of just had to happen now. Basically, if you have a hero that's playable as a support and they have really, really high base damage, the hero is fucking broken. As long as they can transition into more supporting. But if you do like 60 some damage level 1, there's a problem, guys. I don't think there's very many heroes that have that high base damage level 1. Of the ones I can think of, maybe like Bane. Bane does a stupid amount of damage, does Abaddon. Yeah, his damage is quite high, but it's like mostly melee heroes, right? I don't think there's a lot of full ranged heroes that have that much damage. There's no way. Like Necro's like 48, for example, you know? I don't know, maybe Zeus is really high right now, but he doesn't have full attack range, you know? There's stuff like that. Yet you can't use... Shaman is probably the most egregious example, but he's also a 400 range hero, and he's also a 285 movement speed hero, so his movement speed is a little low. He used to be super low. He's only a little low right now. His movement speed's a little low, and his attack range is lower. So Shaman's definitely one of the outliers, for sure. It's safe to say Shaman is an outlier. But there are not a lot of ranged heroes that do about 60 damage right now. So, let's go back. Okay, boop, and then Necrophos, agility rescaled from 15 to plus 1.2 to 12 plus 1.3, and his base movement speed is reduced by 5. That poor bastard. Ugh. Okay, so 3 less agility is 3/7 of an armor. So it's like, I don't know, it's like 2% less survivability at level 1. And he's getting this 0.1 that you get per level. That's never going to reach the same level, right? He'll get 2.5 armor back, I think. A little bit less than that, 2.4 armor. So at level 25, he'll technically have the same agility. But basically his agility is going to suck. So a little bit less movement speed, a little bit less armor, a little bit less attack speed. Base movement speed being reduced by 5 makes him pretty painfully slow now. 280 mobility. And he doesn't have... he used to have movement speed talents, I think. But I think they got removed. Very slow hero right now. Definitely means that things like Blink or Phase might be more required. Maybe a Force to help offset that. If you're wondering why it scrolls up every time, it's because I come back to the page from leaving and it thinks like, oh, surely he wants to look at the start of this. Okay, Phantom Lancer, at least I think that's how it works. 25 talent reduced from 7 Doppelganger to 6. This was literally because they watched OG win that game with Phantom Lancer where he had a 3-second Doppelganger cooldown and it was effing broken. They actually could not kill him because they didn't have enough AoE. With that said, what heroes were they playing that game? I can't remember. But this would mean a 4-second Doppelganger cooldown instead of 3. 3 is so low. It is so low. I know it was in grand finals. I want to go see what heroes they had. Oh, what are these? Why are those there? Is this game 3? Is it this game? Huh. So. No. Maybe it was in the winter bracket finals. It's one of the games they won. Is it this one? No, they lost both of these games. And then they won the last 2. It must have been winter bracket finals. OG. Alright, I'm officially... It was game 4? Really? Did I not see it? Ah. Oh, this is bugged. I forgot. This shit's bugged. They still haven't... They still haven't fixed this? I don't know if you guys noticed, but it says PSG LGD right here. And this says OG. It's flipped. This is still bugged. I genuinely thought they had fixed this. I'm not blind. This is just incorrectly labeled and I forgot it was swapped. That's all. I honestly, that's literally been there for like at least 8 months. I don't know why that's still bugged. I thought like, okay, surely they fixed it by now, right? It was this game. Okay, so they had... Remember Chalice played like Godlike this game. Yeah, he played Godlike this game. The mistake was that Somnus built a Mjolnir. I think Mjolnir is a huge mistake against a PL. You cannot build Mjolnir against PL. And he was doing really well this game too. Oh, and I think Morph had a bug too. There was a bug this game. It's like if you're transformed into somebody when you level up, you don't get the stat bonus from your hero leveling up, is what happened. And a lot of times you're transforming into somebody, use one of their skills, people die there, and then you transform back, but you don't get the bonus. So I think he had lost like a lot of stat bonus, I believe. So he was a lot weaker than he should have been. Maybe affected things a little. At least I saw a Reddit thread. I'm not confirmed on it, I guess, but I read the Reddit thread and it looked valid, sounded right. Anyways, you got to get a Battle Fury. It's really important that you get a Battle Fury. He went kind of utility heavy too. Maybe he needed more raw right click, but if he gets a Battle Fury, he can actually deal with the PL. But either way, he was still doppelganging every 3 seconds and was like virtually impossible to kill. So tough shit. But you need cleave. Mjolnir bounces is not enough. It does only 170 magic damage. It's got like 4,000 HP. It's like you don't deal enough damage to figure out which one's the real one. Anyways, so I think that was completely fair to nerf it. Like they had some solutions, they were kind of ahead, but PL actually became unkillable. He got the passive from PL though. I don't know if I would could you call that a bug? That sounds more like a feature to a bug. The what you're referring to is that when you transform into somebody as Phantom Lancer, or when you use Morph Ultimate, you get access to their basic skills. And Phantom Lancer, the way that the hero works is your illusions that you create have your ultimate passive, which gives them a small chance to spawn illusions. So arguably, you could say that if I turn into PL, that my illusions should not have my ultimate, because I'm turning into a PL that doesn't have my ultimate. And my guess is that it's a pain in the ass to code or change Morphling so that whenever you turn into PL that you get his ulti, that you don't get his ulti. Because any other time that somebody like takes control of a PL illusion, I guess that's different, but it's like one of those really rare instances where I feel like it's, I mean, you could argue it's unfair because PL is literally designed around his ultimate spawning more illusions. And like Spirit Lance and Phantom Rush and Doppelganger are all fine, but your Doppelganger creating illusions. Can you right click? So when you morph into PL and you right click somebody, can you create your own PL illusions from your hero right clicking, or is it only when you cast Doppelganger and then the illusions you spawn with Doppelganger spawn the illusions? Is that how it works? My guess is it is your illusions spawning from Doppelganger that spawn the PLs. Only your illusions. Okay, that makes sense for what I would expect it to be. I don't want to test it. But it kind of makes sense to me because you're spawning these illusions, and the illusions skills are based on PL, the hero who's in the game who has his ultimate. That sounds... I wouldn't necessarily call that a bug personally. It sounds fine to me. Maybe it's kind of broken or whatever. It's like on paper you're not supposed to have the ultimate. I think it's probably fine. Shadow Walk? Nah, that shit was bad. It was like, I don't know, I kind of like those days, but in the same vein, it was also just not fun to play against. Literally, your playstyle was like, farm Radiance, use Doppelwalk to walk your illusion at them while it does Radiance Burn, and you could split push so dirty with old PL. It was so obnoxious, guys. Like, it was so bad. You could easily go split push lanes way longer. Like now, if you're split pushing lanes as PL, you have to have a Manta style. That's like a 5,000 gold item. Believe me, split pushing was so obnoxious back then. Yeah, Doppelganger is kind of hard to play against sometimes, but if you get better, you can figure out which one's real usually. And if you have good AoE as well, it's not that big of a problem. I mean, obviously still used by pro players, but at least I don't think it's obnoxious myself. I think the current PL design is fine. Yeah, Cancer Lancer was the old name, and that was very appropriate. This is not nearly the same as in obnoxious levels. Silencer, Arcane Curse. Silencer was like one of the top 5 supports at TI. Arcane Curse mana cost increase. Yeah, I was way too good at level 175. It's crazy low, especially because you could hit 2 heroes with that. And if you cast at the right time, then you are catching bonus damage. You're catching 2 heroes, and if they also cast spells afterwards, it deals an extra 5 duration, which is kind of crazy. So level 1, it does 16 times 6. You're damn right I'm not doing that mentally. So that's 96 damage. It's a pretty good nuke. And then 5 more would be another 80 damage. So you'd be getting 176 damage from a level 1 skill for 75 mana, hitting 2 heroes. That's broken. And the hero also has, I think, pretty good base int. 25 is really good, yeah. So you could cast Curse of the Silent, Arcane Curse all the time. And then obviously Global Silent later is very useful. That kind of a thing. Oh, that's right. That's the regular icon. Spectre. I have actually played against so many Spectres in the last week. I tweeted about it. Let's go look at my games really quick. Were these shadow or were these single drafts? I can't remember. All right, this one did not have a spec. This one had a jug for some reason. I fed a lot in this game, but then I owned later. It was fine. This game had a Spectre. I'm quite sure. Here's a Spectre, 2, 9, and 4. You know what I do when I play against Spectres, guys? I go to their lane and I poop on them. And then they're like, oh shit, I'm not actually good at Spectre. What do I do now? And they're like, well, you know what? Maybe I'll just play until we win eventually. It doesn't work like that, guys. All right, there wasn't a Spectre here. This is so far not seeming to be very accurate. Oh, this game, these people kept abandoning single draft games for some reason. This one was one of my teammates. It was really weird. I don't even remember this game. There have been literally... Wait. There's a Spectre on my team this game. There's been a lot of Spectres. That's what I'm trying to say. Oh, this is ability draft. Okay. If you guys are very confused about these items, let's hop on over here and see. Okay, there we go. That's why he's got weird shit. All right, well, let's give up on this because it's so far. It feels like I've seen a lot of Spectres for sure. And I dare say that they're bad usually. But I've been playing with lower skilled players. I've been playing with lower MMR friends lately. Okay. Spectral Dagger, linger duration reduced from 2 to 1. That means that after the dagger runs out, how long this slow stays on you. And now it's only 1 second. I think that's pretty fair. So it basically means... Is that for both targets and... Is that for both yourself and enemies? I assume so, because probably the buff affects you different based on what hero you are or if you're the target that threw it. So I assume this means that if you throw your dagger and then juke into trees where your dagger isn't, that it won't last on you as long. So I'm guessing it's probably harder to juke with it now. And also if you throw it on somebody and it runs out, it won't... Basically, it lasts for 7 seconds, right? You could argue the duration would be 9 seconds before, now it's only 8. Which is something. That's certainly it's slightly misleading, but it's absolutely something. It's something that you probably didn't realize, but we'll feel. And it might justify Spectres for getting the cooldown reduction talent more now. Dispersion, max reflection range reduced from 1,000 to 700. I think this is a really good idea. Desolate single hero range check increase. So if people are 375 is kind of far. Basically, like, Desolate's not going to proc as often. Dispersion is arguably the one place where Spec was getting kind of broken. So the way that Dispersion works, I didn't realize this until I read this the other day, but the damage reflected, I know it's based on how close you are to the hero. If you're closer to Spectre, if you're within 300 units of her, it's dealing max damage. But it actually does the same damage to any hero nearby, and creeps as well. So it's like if you have 5 heroes on top of Spectre damaging her, they're all taking equal dispersion damage. They're all taking 22% of the damage that you're dealing to Spectre or throwing at Spectre. I thought that it would like spread evenly. I think it used to back in the day, but I didn't realize that it was doing equal. So if you all jump on Spectre as like melee heroes versus Spectre is basically going to be a really bad time because you're all going to take way more damage because you're probably have to be in melee to damage her, essentially. So this basically means that if you're on the outer edges of the team fight, or if you're like max range attacking her, you're going to be taking way less damage. I don't know exactly what the numbers are. Does this mean that... So basically, if you're more than 700 units away from her, you take 0 damage. But before, is it like if you're at 900 units, you're taking some percentage difference from 1,000 to 300? Whatever that number is. It's probably like 80%, 90%. You'd be taking like 10% or 20%. I don't know. But I think the range reduction is definitely... I'm sure this is a big deal. This is like one of those things where it's kind of hard to know if it's huge. I'm sure it's massive in late game. This is probably like amazing. Like this is probably a huge fucking nerf in the late game, I imagine, which I think is good because the skill is kind of brainless. Not saying Anna's brainless or anything like that, but the skill is kind of brainless and it's kind of hard to play around if you don't have a silver edge. If you can't fit in a silver edge, it's kind of hard to beat, or at least it's like obnoxious to deal with. So I think, or other break skill. So I think this is probably a good way to nerf the hero. This is, I think, maybe one of the more extreme nerfs that we've seen. Maybe I'm overstating it a bit. It's a very extreme late game nerf. Most of the other nerfs are all early game, but this one's pretty extreme late game, I feel like. Tiny's tree grab mana cost increased. Tiny was actually very popular. TI kind of came out of nowhere again, but people just started playing him like old Tiny. They just like one shot people. They didn't fuck around with like weird items. They're just like, I'm gonna get a blink and I'm gonna get 30 kills as Sumail, kind of a thing. Most people would get 1 point in tree grab. Maybe that will be more encouraged to not do that now. But you'd get pretty good bonus damage, 25% per hit for 5 attacks, and they could throw it as well. So it's very good for last hitting into 9 in laning stage. 50 mana is a lot though. That means that you're gonna need more mana regen in the laning stage probably. Avalanche cooldown is also increased to be worse early on, which is probably not a big deal. At least skill build wise, pro players were going, they're usually maxing Avalanche first. The reason being that the Avalanche damage is the damage that gets amplified. When you do an Avatos combo, it does 4 ticks of damage. So usually they would max that first and then get 1 point toss so that they could double their damage. Like, because if you get 4 points, if you're level 7, you have 4 points Avalanche and 1 in toss, you would deal 600 damage with Avalanche, and your toss would deal like 75 times 40% or whatever the heck the self toss is. If you go the opposite way, you deal just far less damage, more or less. You deal like 420 or something instead of the opposite. 240 plus. It's not that different, I guess, because Avalanche level 1 is not bad, but I don't know, this nerf is a little bit bizarre to me. I thought it would have been, because people are going, I think the tree grab one makes sense, but this is basically, you could argue this is a nerf to, I guess you could say it's a pretty big nerf to Tiny. And not a big nerf, but it's a little nerf to Tiny, like level 1, 2, 3, basically. This is like definitely a laning stage nerf. Maybe the hero is just way too good at getting last hits, is why, he's way too good at laning in most situations, which is why most people are picking him. Because it's like, most of your lanes, Tiny is going to be able to win, because you have high base damage, 74 to 80, and then that's also increased by 25% per tree grab attack. So you'd get a bunch of free denies basically. Yeah, you've got no agility, but whatever, and no armor or whatever. But Stout Shield, Stout Shield got buffed. Lasts it too well, and then you go for like an avalanche, walk up into a toss back into a support kind of a thing. I saw a lot of lanes get one like that. So maybe Tiny just like too obnoxious to lane against, and too generally across the board good. Ursa getting a nerf because Ursa was very strong at TI, just because melee hero gives you like these 1v1 matchup advantages. I don't know how great his win rate was. I felt like it was kind of middling success, but overpower being 75 mana at level 1 is certainly a nerf. Means that you can't really leave it at level 1. I saw a lot of like 3-1-1 skill builds at the start of the main event, or maybe group stage, don't remember which. And I feel like that kind of continued. We don't really see overpower get maxed early. Maybe it will be, I mean, the mana cost going up is not the end of the world. But it certainly is going to make the laning stage a lot more, like battling in the laning stage, you're going to run on mana way faster. So he actually has a really bad mana pool. Spending 75 per skill that you use now, whereas instead of before it was like 45 plus 75. That's like what, 120 mana or something to do a combo. Now you're up to 150. That's a huge difference. It's a really big difference. So you can do, you could do 2 combos before, basically, of 1 overpower, 1 earth shock, and now it's less than 1. So maybe need more mangoes now as Ursa is what I would recommend to offset this. Vengeful Spirit also getting a nerf. She was a little bit too good. Towards the end of the tournament, she fell off a bit. She was mostly used, in my opinion, as a solution to tanky strength heroes like Wraith King. Wraith King was also very popular, because Wraith King has pretty low armor. It takes a little bit of time to get him an armor item. So between like Wave of Terror, Magic Missile, and a little bit of Aura, you could really cut through Wraith King pretty easily, especially if you combo Venge with somebody like Weaver. So making Wave of Terror worse is a pretty fair effort. And this, now that there's a cooldown difference, I'm definitely going to max Wave of Terror a lot faster now, I think. Usually I would see people go like 2 stun, 2 wave maybe, or they'd go, I personally am kind of a fan of going like low Magic Missile, but some players would get like 3 Magic Missile, I think. But maybe, I mean, the duration is not that high. I guess it's not bad. It's 8 seconds on a 16-second cooldown. That's not too bad. It's just not quite as spammable. It's just so low mana. 25 mana is so broken. Like 25 mana for 60 damage is ridiculous. That's like 2 times the damage per mana to cast the spell at 10-second cooldown. It was like, you get so much value out of that skill in the laning stage. So 16 seconds is a lot more reasonable. You have to pick and choose your battles a bit more. Leveling this skill up is still not great. I mean, it's like, what, 20 damage, 1 armor. It's like a 5% damage increase, more or less. And then 20 damage is like, per skill point, it's kind of weak. But Venge does have pretty good low level skills right now. Okay. Weaver, the Swarm mana cost is increased up to 110 at all levels. That's pretty costly. Basically means it's kind of similar to like the Ursa thing. You can't go on your opponents as often in the lane stage. 110 is a shitload of mana, and that's really the big difference for Weaver. If you put bugs on somebody, they gotta worry. And Weaver has like some of the worst stats in the game. Terrible base stats, terrible stat gain outside of agility. So you really need things like Aquila and Wand. What is these little shitty claws? Why do I have these? They look so... I equip those, but I don't like them. They look weird. I don't know why. That's the first thing I looked at. Where's my little bug fingers? You know what I mean? Where's my little grabbies? These look like something I just like go to battle and like stab a guy. Which bug fingers are the best, guys? These ones. They're creepy and long. It's like the alien will like touch your face slightly before it kills you. Kind of a finger. All right, Weaver, and then down at the bottom, we got the Wraith King, Wraithfire Blast, cooldown increase. So they didn't. I was wondering if they were gonna increase the mana cost because it was only 95. It's very, very low. This used to be an 8-second cooldown on all levels with 140 mana. Then they buffed it to be lower mana cost by higher cooldown, but not that much, only 11 seconds. And now it's even higher at 14 seconds. So it's going to be so much harder to cast this multiple times in the same team fight. And additional points of this ability are way better now. Basically 2 seconds skill cooldown reduction per skill point now. Most Wraith Kings were going 2-0-2. They'd skip the aura for a long time. They'd go just get as many Mortal Strikes as possible. Spawn some Skellies, throw a Wraithfire Blast, and then the Skellies chase after the person that you stun to zone them out of the lane. And that's the end of the patch. So I think summary-wise, literally all these heroes here, if I'm not mistaken, were all TI heroes. This patch is no difference, basically, for heroes that weren't played at TI. So this is a like, let's temporarily fix the pro scene. Now, something I didn't mention before that I didn't think about until right now is interesting. I thought, why hasn't Valve changed all of the heroes that pub players like to play that haven't been popular? Why isn't there a buff to Ricky Maru or Slardar or something, right? The answer is that the major qualifiers are literally in less than 2 weeks, if I'm not mistaken. Where is it? Dota 2 Major Schedule 2018. Hop on over here. All right, the major qualifiers for the first major, which is in November. Ooh. Okay, it's September 1st right now. The month after September is November, right? Major qualifiers is September 17. That's in 16 days. So in 16 days, all of the pro teams that want to try to play in the first major need to have their team solidified, and they need to be up on the meta, and they need to play a qualifier. If there was a giant patch right now, pro players would be fucking furious for good reason, because they're already upset that they have to play qualifiers less than a month after TI. It's literally been 1 week since TI. We have slightly more than 2 more weeks to go. So that's 3 weeks after TI ends that they need to disband, cry about losing, understandably, because it's fucking stressful and they love Dota and all that shit. I'm not trying to flame the players or whatever here. And number 3, find a new team. And then they have to practice. And if you don't qualify for the major, you can qualify for the minor. That qualifier is immediately afterwards. But as soon as those qualifiers end, there's a big break until October. The end of October, which is the minor. And then whoever wins the minor gets to go play at the major, which is 4 days after that. So basically, like, teams need to learn shit now. So a giant patch that massively changes the game would have been catastrophic. I totally skipped over Urn of Shadows and Spirit Vessel, I now realize. Heal rate reduced to 30 per level. Still does the same damage, but it just heals for less. That sounds pretty reasonable to me. Because if you're winning, it's probably faster to keep snowballing. Oh, wow, they reduced the movement speed bonus. Okay. Spirit Vessel is actually like one of those like worst items on paper items now. It's like literally all of its base components are what it gives you. It's literally an Urn of Shadows, a Windlace, and a Vitality Booster. No extra benefits other than the fact that the active is better. But the heal rate being reduced, I don't think it's going to matter for Spirit Vessel that much. Because we're talking, it already heals 1% of their... Oh, of current. I haven't looked at this item in a while. The numbers wise. When used on allies, it increases health by 1% of current health per second and increases HP regeneration and healing by 20%. I didn't realize that it increases their increased their HP regen and healing by 20% as well. And then it also provides 30 per second. I didn't know that it gave you 1% of current health. I thought it gave you 1% of max for some reason. But I guess the other one's current. When it used offensively, it reduces health by 4.5% of current. So it's better when they're full HP. And it also reduces HP regen and healing by 70%. Deals 20 damage per second. So, I mean, that's literally... It increases their regen and healing by 20%. So it's more like... Oh, thank you. I'll open that in a second when I'm done with this thought. It does... It's basically like 5 times 8, which is 40, and then 20% of that, which is like another 8. So it's like 48 less HP, you could argue, that it'll give you when you Spirit Vessel an ally, which isn't that big of a deal. But I think the Earn one, I think, is more justified, I would say. Because Spirit Vessel charges are way more precious, right? Because you can use them to reduce healing on enemies. But Earn of Shadows charges are good against like Blink Daggers and stuff, and like bottles and enemy urns, but the heal component is arguably the strongest part of the item. I would say that's like 60% of it, maybe 70. So it healing. All right, I'm just gonna do the math. I don't want to fuck this up. 35 times 8 is 280. So it should be 240. Yeah. So instead of 280 HP, it heals 240. That's actually a huge difference. I think that's a huge difference. It's what, 15% less heal? It's more like, yeah, 15 to 14% less heal. It's pretty huge. I think that's a big nerf to Earn, but I think it's justified because it kind of accelerates the game a little too fast once you get Earn, because it's like, oh, you want to team fight somebody's alive, pop the Earn, start pushing. I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing, but I think it's safe to say that this item is just so fucking good right now. 875 gold for what this gives you. 2 armor, 2 attributes, 1 mana regen for 875 gold. It is such a good item. Earn is so good, assuming you're able to kill enemy heroes. So things like Earn and Spirit Vessel kind of, regardless of like how they affect the game's tempo, I think that kind of has to be ignored a little bit, because they're just so good that like buying anything else is just not worth it a lot of times. Like Mech, for example. So do I think Mechanism buff will make it playable? I mean, it's 25 HP. It's really not much. But against AoE heroes, Mechanism is potentially a very good item. Like against Spectres or something, Mech can be really nice, because it's like, oh shit, we take Haunt, we instantly take all this Radiance damage for like 6 seconds. You can Mech that off and keep yourself up. Against a Bloodseeker, you could argue Mech is the Bloodseeker counter. Because if they have AoE damage and a Bloodseeker, like a Zeus or something, offset all that damage, the Bloodseeker doesn't run fast. Most of the time, Bloodseeker relies on like, lowering 1 or 2 guys low HP, but you could definitely justify like Mech being a Bloodseeker counter, for example. It's just most of the time you just don't really have the mana pool. Like basically you kind of need to be like an int hero to buy Mech right now. It's kind of what it feels like. And another problem is that like I don't even want to buy Arcane Boots on int heroes right now. That's the other reason that Mech sucks right now. Because when they change stats so that int heroes get 25% more mana from int, it's like most int heroes have really good int gain anyways. So it's like, do I want to buy, if I'm going to buy Mech on Lich, do I want to buy Arcane Boots? Fuck no. I don't need, I mean, that's maybe a bad example because Lich has like a skill that literally gives him mana, but most of these heroes, I don't want to buy Arcane Boots. I do not want to buy Arcane Boots on Crystal Maiden. Most of them are nerfed to be slow for the reason that they already have like, what was I going to say? That they already have too much mana already, and they already have generally decent damage and stuff, so it's like they reduce their movement speed a lot. So you need to get Tranquil Boots for a lot of these guys, and then when you've got Tranquil Boots, you don't want to make Arcanes because Tranquils are so much better. It's just like 90 movement speed for less gold, and you can just get a couple Clarity Potions and not have to spend 900 gold on an Arcane Boots. You can instead spend the, we'll say 600 of that gold getting a cloak and working on your Glimmer Cape or something. So there's just not a lot of cases where I feel like Mech is, Especially Greaves just doesn't feel great. But maybe there's some cases where like a silencer should fit in a mech, or maybe a Winter Wyvern should buy a mech more often, or as a support, or stuff like that. Maybe throw a mech on a random hero, because maybe at some point it'll be worth it. Dazzle already builds Greaves a lot. Like, I don't even like buying Arcanes on Dazzle because his int gain is so fucking high. 3.4 per level. It's crazy good. He has so much mana. Like, a lot of times I just go Brown Boots Dazzle. I just don't want to spend. I'd much rather spend that gold on a medallion or an urn or both. Because if I level my hero up, let's see how much mana I have by like level. I'm like level 7. I have like literally equal mana to HP. It's crazy. It's because I get 18 HP per strength point, and I get 15 mana per int point. Like, if I'm running around with like a wand or something right now, and like a Brown Boots or something, I have so much mana. Like, my skills all cost like pretty low amounts, right? I can cast Shadow Wave so many times with this, especially if I also have like an urn or something. Because then my mana regen goes from like, what was that, 1.9? I get like 2.1 mana per second just from having an Urn of Shadows. If I get a medallion on top of that to get another 0.5 mana regen, I'm at 5.1 per second. Like, I do not need Arcane Boots. Arcanes gives me 135 mana every 55 seconds. Let's do the math on that. It's like 2 point something. 2.45. So Arcane Boots, if I have Arcane Boots, I get 2.45 mana per second. And Urn gives me 2.1. Literally the same. Urn of Shadows is literally less money than Arcanes. Yes, you can use Arcanes to give your allies mana, and sometimes like it's really nice when cores have that. But Urn does so much more. I'd like on almost every int hero, I'd always prefer to have Urn of Shadows over an Arcanes, without a doubt. So that's why like making mech is just kind of shitty, because then you're like, I have to have 40 less movement speed through the whole laning stage in dangerous moments when I'm going for ganks or running away. I have less HP regen. It's literally 550 gold to upgrade to Tranquils. It is so inexpensive. And now I'm running around like a freaking speed demon. Like, basically I get an extra set of boots for 550 gold, just about. And instead you're like, oh, well, maybe I need to make an Arcanes just in case I have like 3,000 gold laying around to make Guardian Greaves. It's just like, it's just so unlikely. It just sucks. No, I love Dazzle. I'm just saying why Arcane Boots blows, that's all. That's all I'm talking crap about. Arcane Boots is just bad on int heroes in a lot of cases. That's all. Having mana regen is just so much better. Does that mean Arcanes could become the boots of choice for strength heroes? It already is in a lot of cases. You know, you've got like Earthshakers, Kunkka supports, Magnuses, Undying, it's not uncommon. Underlord, it's not uncommon. Tusk, it's very common. Tidehunter gets Arcane Boots. A lot of a lot of strength heroes do buy Arcanes. Not uncommon at all. So that's one of the negatives. It's like, it's good for supports that they have more mana from int, but now buying Arcane Boots and Greaves feels bad, pretty much. Because it's not a percentage mana regen, it's a gift of mana, so it doesn't scale with their int. So it's like it doesn't like scale with them being high intelligence heroes already, pretty much. Arcanes doesn't seem important since clarity change, basically, but it's also the int one. You're saying clarity change, but really it's about the int change. Clarities became broken because of the int change. You're getting more mana regen from clarity potions than you used to because of the way that they change attributes. So it's about the stat change more so than the clarity one. You're not a good support if you don't buy Arcanes to mana your carry. Prove me wrong. It's pretty straightforward. Carries should already have mana for themselves in the most part. Yes, it can be really amazing sometimes for your support to roll up and like Arcanes you when you're at like 0. But if you're playing well, you're gonna have an Aquila as an agility hero, always. That gives you trickle mana. Sometimes you'll have a raindrop, sometimes you have a magic stick, and you should bring yourself clarity potions sometimes. And you should also generally, as cores, be greedy with shrines to refill your mana. You do not need like your support Like if I'm playing Dazzle and I have to gamble, like, hey, maybe am I gonna finish my Glimmer Cape by the time the Slark gets Shadowblade, and I have to delay that by 900 gold? Like Glimmer Cape is not an expensive item. 1950 gold, and I can like guarantee that I keep myself alive against like the first gank that comes from a core usually, unless they're really good at planning ahead in the Carry of Dust or a Sentry or supports there. 1950 gold. If I spend 900 to get Arcanes that I don't really need, unless I'm inefficient on the map, don't bring myself Clarities, or my core just really needs it, it's like that's half the gold cost right there, just about. It is so expensive to pick up a Glimmer, or to pick up an Arcanes to delay your Glimmer. And Arcanes doesn't even increase your HP anyways, or your survivability anyways. It's literally the same movement speed as what a Brown Boots is. I don't know where Brown's 50, yeah. Same movement speed, it literally just gives you more mana pool. You do not need Arcane Boots on an Intero, unless you're playing like Lina, like somebody that has a lot of spells to cast. Like Wyvern, Zeus, Lina, potentially like Leshrac. I don't even think it's good on Jakiro. I don't think it's good on Warlock usually, almost always. Skywrath Mage, kind of up to you, but generally I prefer to get mana regen and more int. Silencer, hell no, dude. You need like Tranquils or some shit to run fast. Shadow Shaman, it can work because you can spam spells. Like basically anybody that spams AoE spells to get last hits and to push waves can get away with it. Like a Arcane's on CM would actually be really good, but she's so slow that you actually really need Tranquils. And you also kind of need an HP regen source anyways, and you get mana regen from your aura, so you can kind of get away with just like relying on aura. Should you rush no boots Atos on Skywrath? It's probably worth buying the boots basically. I never really played Skywrath that much when the no boots thing got popular. I'm not the biggest fan of it. I like almost every Sky player does get boots now, so I think that playstyle kind of went away. Maybe that's because you could. What was the purpose? Like Arcane Bolt was just more abusable, basically. Stuff like that. So you could get more value out of the int you have. So Sky isn't really played the same way anymore. More or less. I don't know that was there. I will definitely make artifact content when the game comes out. But for now, I won't say anything about it other than that I had a lot of fun playing it last night. And I recommend watching the stream. It's steam.tv. Just go to steam.tv, you'll find it. I think that's how I found it. It just instantly was there. I don't know. I tried to look at it on mobile, and the website was not ready for my mobile device. But I had a lot of fun playing it. Oh yeah, the gift. Thank you. Totally forgot. I think I know what this is, but I'm not 100%. All right, that's exactly what I thought it was going to be. Thank you for that, Chavo.